Welcome back to the Sky Mobile Transfer Show, where we debate the latest links, rumours and done deals across the January transfer window. Today, it's a Liverpool special, so who better to get on than Lawrence McCann?
Thank you. I think there are a few names, but fair enough. I'm still here. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Joe knows.
Well, maybe we're scraping the barrel, but nevertheless, Joe Tomlinson in the building as well.
Talking of barrels being scraped, I'm in the building as well.
Yeah, well done.
So yeah,
nice to be here, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having us both. Yeah,
You're
great, by the way.
You're killing it.
We'll see. Well, Doogie was the presenter last week, so there is an option to transfer me back. We'll see. Speaking of upgrades or potentially downgrades, we are going to be looking at potential replacements for Liverpool's out of contract stars this week. I know this has been done to death a little bit recently, but we're going to be looking specifically at cheap options versus expensive options. Of course, if Liverpool have to replace all three, God forbid, then they may have to look at some cheap options as well as world-class replacements. We'll also be picking our Sky Mobile Switch of the Week at the end of the show, so stick around for that. Liverpool, Lawrence, I mean, in a great position at the moment. We're filming this before the Nottingham Forest game, so who knows what will have happened there. But either way, Liverpool will have remained favourites for the Premier League title, 100% record in the Champions League. Mo Salah, on course to break his own records this season as well. How are you feeling, and do you think Liverpool need to do anything in this January transfer window?
With Liverpool, it always becomes a little bit late when you work out what it was that they needed to do because they're so secretive, because they do not want you to know what they're doing in the transfer market. Michael Edwards notoriously tries to deliberately throw people off and, chum the water almost to get people frenzied and excited. And that helps him then operate in the shadows. So as Liverpool fans, it slightly throws you off because you hear a lot of rumours and go, wow, that would be really exciting. And, there's loads of expensive names linked, but very rarely do they actually come off. And we got used to some of the big names coming off, Darwin Núñez, you could even say Virgil van Dijk or Alisson. But really, all three of those would solve very clear problems within the team. And actually, Salah, Van Dijk and Trent, they're irreplaceable figures. So you would fundamentally have to change how you play if you moved on any of those three. And arguably, least of those would be Mo Salah, just purely because he plays as a more traditional winger. I know his numbers are outstanding, but you still see, if we got rid of Mo, there could be other wingers who could come in and at least try and do an impression or make up the numbers in the aggregate. The other two, I think, are the hard ones to replace.
Yeah, interesting. Well, let's start with Mo Salah because, so many right-wing options out there. And like you say, Lawrence, any of these players being replaced, it's hard to see how you completely replace their output. But Joe, you're going to suggest the cheap option here for Mo Salah.
I'm budget man over here,
and Lawrence is going to be suggesting the expensive ones. You guys decide at home who you think is the best option. Let's start with the cheap option, Joe. I mean, who have you gone for? Are they particularly cheap or are they?
Well, I know you said that you think there's like a few right-wing options on the market. I think it's a really limited market, that right-wing space. I don't think there are necessarily big contenders for that spot. I think there's a very clear separation between, Salah, Yamal, probably Saka, and then the rest. And the rest are a long way off the level we're talking there. So I think you probably have to replace Mo Salah in the aggregate. If you're trying to find a budget alternative, a player under £50 million, I think it's really, really difficult. Could you dip into a club that are potentially overstocked after this January window? You look at PSG, who are bringing Maradona in. What does that mean for Bradley Barcola? What does that mean for Desiree Doué? What does that mean for Lee Kang-in? I think there are lots of question marks over that squad. Now, do I think they'd let Barcola go, who is sort of the star of the project? No. Desiree Doué, maybe, but does he want to play on the right? No. Kang, does he play on the right? Yes, but he doesn't have that goal output. And I think that's the crucial element of Mo Salah's game. The relentless ability to bang goals in. I was also tempted to say Ademola Lookman in here, who has scored a lot of goals recently, hasn't he? In an excellent Atalanta side. But again, I always have a slight concern when it comes to sort of Gasperini's fool's gold. How many of these players look amazing because they're in a Gasperini system? We've seen numerous occasions players exit that Gasperini system and struggle. Just take Koopmeiners from the summer, for example. Doesn't look the player he looked at Atalanta, does he? So I like those options, but I think you've got to keep it simple. A Prem alternative to Mo Salah, for me, that you might be able to get under £50 million, an obvious name. Sometimes that's the best candidate. I'm going to suggest Bryan Mbeumo for this role. His output has been excellent. He is one of the most clinical strikers or forwards in Europe. I think he's got the best conversion rate of any Premier League forward, over 37%. He overperforms his XG consistently. It reminds me a little bit of a Son Heung-min style player who is just a great finisher in 1v1 situations and around the edge of the box. He's not going to be able to replace Mo Salah's output creatively. Back to goal, probably not either. But he's still only 25. He's out of contract in 2026, isn't he? That still hasn't been agreed. It feels like a very natural fit. He could come in on that right wing. But I found this nearly impossible. Trying to find a right wing alternative that's anywhere near the level of the three guys who are on the pedestal right now.
Yeah, I think it is really, really difficult, isn't it? I mean, I guess the question with Mbeumo is, I mean, Brentford also have an option to extend his contract by a further year to 2027. So they could dig their heels in. January, I think, would be wishful thinking as well.
It's never happening in January.
It seems like one for the summer, doesn't it? And then there may be other competition. This is a question for both of you, actually, but Ben Doak smashing it on loan at Middlesbrough at the moment. Could you see a world where whoever is signed to replace Mo Salah is almost a stopgap before Liverpool produce another young star, or Ben Doak comes into the fray like that?
Well, I think before we talk about Ben Doak, we should also mention Harvey Elliott for this role, right? He was kind of the next cab off the rank in terms of that high-level calibre player who is an absolute elite young talent. They brought him in and his ceiling was so high, but hasn't quite had the physicality to play the way Salah wants to play, right? Specifically in transition. He's also had that sort of stigma of, is he a right winger? Is he an attacking mid? Where does he want to play? Sometimes he's being used in a midfield three. So before we talk about Ben Doak, what does the future for Harvey Elliott hold if he isn't going to be selected as this sort of next right winger?
And also his approach to that. Like, I think Harvey's very eager to be in the first team, and now he has been for quite some time. You know, and when you have a management transition, should we say, between someone like Klopp and Slot, Harvey Elliott felt very much like the next one up, like you said, under Klopp. But now under Slot, the emphasis in the team has changed. And so I don't think he has the output or it's nothing to do with ability, it's nothing to do with technical prowess, any of those things. I just don't think he fits the profile of what Slot wants on the right wing. And I think the emphasis will have to change if Mo Salah's not going to be there anymore. But I don't think it would change so much that they could put Harvey Elliott in that position and say, right, we're comfortable with him being our only starting option on the right. Also considering his recent injury record or just the amount of minutes he's getting, are we really sure that if Salah was to leave, we could say, right, there's a full season in Harvey Elliott here? It's not to say that I don't think he's a great ability. It is to say, I think he wants to be a consistent starter, and genuinely Liverpool are probably looking at that and saying that might be elsewhere then. The worry for Liverpool, and everyone is, especially considering who they got rid of last summer, all the young profiles, how many of them fall into a, right, you are Trent, and how many of them become Harry Wilson, where it's a great Premier League level ability, but you don't currently fit the profile that we're looking for. And there are a lot of players within the team. You know, they let Carvalho go, and I get it, like Michael Edwards is very good at getting value. They're probably looking at someone like Ben Doak and thinking, if we can get 30 million for him, we can, you know, roll that in, have a rollover with the Nunez money, which is allegedly coming from somewhere else. That's potentially two £50 million players we can get. Shift the emphasis to striker, have a slightly more supply style of right winger, especially if Trent wasn't to be there next season. And suddenly the team's emphasis looks very different. That's a whole other ecosystem then that Slot would have completely readjusted in one transfer window.
Yeah, interesting. Great pitch for sporting director at Liverpool there from yourself, Laura.
No one is going to do a better job than Michael Edwards, and I'm sure there are plenty of people online who would definitely say no. So,
no, I like the thinking there. I like the thinking. Also, a difficult one with Harvey Elliott, isn't it? That injury seemed to come at the worst possible time, just when he was, trying to impress Arne Slot. And I know Arne Slot has been very, complimentary of him, saying that it's been difficult for him to come back from injury.
You're right about Doak, though, by the way, and we haven't really covered him. Fantastic talent, great in the Championship. Again, does he fit that style of player that Slot really wants? I'm not 100% sure he does. Yeah. Which is
He's a lot more creative, isn't
he? And still very, very young as well. We don't quite know exactly
19.
what player he's going to turn out to be. But on the subject, Lawrence, who have you gone for as the expensive option for Liverpool here?
It's hard to see Liverpool
replacement
buying an expensive option, mainly because that's not traditionally the style. But if they do see the value in the expense, then they probably go for it. For me, Semenyo fits that.
Okay.
You were talking about who the equivalent would be. I think we've missed the impetus and the cutting edge of someone like Mane since Mane's left. It's not to say that I think he would come in and be Mane. I don't think anyone can do that. I think Mane was a lot more prolific than he gets the credit for in the Premier League. But I think a lot of Liverpool fans at the moment are thinking, we need Salah in Salah's position. We need another Diaz or another Gakpo there, and we need another striker here. I think Semenyo would be enough of a shift in profile, but still do a lot of what Salah can do, and offer goals, and offer assists, and offer a great counter-attacking pace, all the things that we see we currently need, and consistently be there where other people's injuries have possibly let us down. That's one thing I think a lot of people don't acknowledge about Salah. He's just always on the starting 11. And in order to become a Premier League great, you always have to be in the team. And that's our real issue at Liverpool at the moment. We've had some consistent starters, and they're going to be so hard to replace just for the minutes and the amount of pitch that they cover per game. That's Salah's game, and I think we can see someone like Semenyo come in and do that.
Salah's going to end up staying there. Let's be real. Salah is going to sign a new contract. I'm utterly convinced, man.
I think that's the caveat that no one's really covering at the moment. Like, really, all the names they're rumoured to be courting at the moment are probably then going, oh, we could go for this guy if you don't want to put pen to paper. That's probably the realistic nature of what's happening here.
Yep.
At the same time, the other thing I've heard or in speaking to people is if they did sign a high-profile player, they'd probably just say to Salah, well, the contract's no longer on the table. This has been fantastic, but there is a big name or a name that we feel fits us. And for me, that's why someone like Semenyo would fit.
What about as well, just like another rogue suggestion here, if you were to look at the other end of the spectrum, because we've talked about players who could come in and have instant impacts, like a Semenyo, like an Mbeumo. I think the other way to look at this is you go out and you signed one of the best young players that could also drift out on that right-hand side in world football. What about if you were looking at a player like an Arda Güler, who...
Sure.
In my opinion, I just don't see the route to consistent first-team football in that Real Madrid squad with the quality in that front line. People at home might be saying, well, what about Rodrigo? I think Rodrigo, if he leaves, kind of wants to play on that left a little bit more. Sure. And does he want to leave Real Madrid? Whereas Arda Güler hasn't had the opportunity this year to impact that first team. And we have seen Real Madrid in the past, not necessarily make mistakes, but allowing Martin Ødegaard to leave because of the quality of player they had in that central area and in that attacking zone. It was on loan initially, and then it ended up being a permanent deal. I wonder if there's like a smart bit of business for like an Arda Güler that is a little bit risky because, he might turn out to be a bit of a dud, but also has a massively high up ceiling where he could be one of the best inside right sort of players in world football.
Yeah, interesting shout there. I actually suggested him as an option for Arsenal on a short-term deal last week. Feels like the feeling at Real Madrid is that he's pretty essential to that squad at this moment in time, but it would be a massive opportunity. Also, feels like he's had quite a creative midfielder as well. Szoboszlai and Curtis Jones very much dominating in the number 10 role at Liverpool as well. But interesting shouts there. Let us know in the comments who you would go for out of Mbeumo and Semenyo. I mean, on the face of it, they should be around similar kind of price points. But Semenyo's got that contract until 2029, doesn't he? It feels like Bournemouth could really charge what they want unless he starts kicking up a fuss. Another one before we move on to Trent Alexander-Arnold, Stefanos Tzimas, Lawrence. Before coming to the studio, you were getting quite excited about the news around him.
I'd say
but links with him as a potential Darwin Núñez replacement. Can you tell us anything more about him?
Well, so Sam Maguire broke the story the other day, and he's a source that I trust a lot because he's got some fingers in many pies, shall we say. And in his writing, he was speaking about how he profiles. Liverpool at the moment, we don't have Jota very consistently because of his injury record. And Darwin Núñez, it's fair to say, isn't like ripping up the flowers this season. So we need someone who is going to act as either a stopgap or a young, promising player to come through. The way he's been described to me is tall Diogo Jota. Very good at dribbling, good at bringing the ball into the box and then finishing when he gets there, and a good link-up player with the other guys around him. That's what we need, essentially, right now. At the moment, I think most people would agree, Liverpool look a little limited with Darwin Núñez starting in the side. That's not a criticism of Darwin. I just think he's not the profile that Slot wants. and he can go somewhere else. The rumours were AC Milan, somewhere like that. I just think any other high-profile club and be their out-and-out striker. That's not what Slot is asking his striker to do. So they need someone who feels a bit more like a Jota, can drive from deep, get the ball, hold it up, be very consistent about that. And apparently he suits this. The, I guess, asterisk next to that is he's doing it in a second division in Germany where his numbers are good, as we were saying, but how does that translate? Liverpool stats guys are probably, by the way, a lot of Liverpool stats guys now have changed, so we don't know whether Liverpool stat guys are still the same, whether the models even still exist. But Liverpool stats guys consistently seem to be very good at translating, will this work from here over to here? And if they're getting excited, then I think we've got reason to get excited.
Interesting. Yeah, keep an eye on that for sure. Let's move on to Trent Alexander-Arnold then. Joe, who have you gone for the cheap option as a replacement for Trent?
I mean, it's the impossible job here, isn't it? Realistically, the answer here is Conor Bradley, right? Like, Conor Bradley will be the guy who steps into those boots, probably the most talented young right back in the league, really. But then equally, you've got to look at it. You can't sign a young right back because you've already got the guy who's the best young right back in terms of Conor Bradley. So do you actually want to sign someone who's a little bit more experienced, maybe can come in and provide cover in multiple roles? So I'm looking at the cheap market here. I'm thinking, could that be Ola Aina, who is out of contract this summer but has the option to extend? That'll probably get triggered, right? But he can offer cover not just at right back, but also at left back. He can also play in a pretty hybrid system, as we've seen at Forest, where he's effectively a wing back at times. He's excellent on the ball, really, really good defensively. And he's also 28. It's not like he is a youngster who is going to be vying with Conor Bradley age for age. You'd think he would come in and offer a very different style of fullback in terms of his attacking output. This season, he's just been magnificent for Forest. Obviously, at the time of recording, he's part of, I think, the equal best defence in the league, or second best defence in the league. What Nuno's managed to do with that back four is absolutely remarkable, because we saw at times previously him operating as a left wing back. Now he's a right back. That versatility would be a massive bonus to a Liverpool side who have struggled in the left-back area as well with Andy Robertson there, and I'm not sure there's a long-term future for Kostas Tsimikas necessarily as a first-teamer anyway. So Ola Aina's versatility, his ability on the ball, his age profile, the fact that his contractual situation means he might be more available than some other right-backs in world football, mean that it could be a bit of a market opportunity, this. I'm not saying he is the perfect Trent Alexander-Arnold replacement, but stylistically, his underlying numbers are all really, really effective. Big tackle and interception numbers, very creative, excellent on the ball. I think overall as a package, it's quite tempting. And there's a reason Manchester City are quite interested in Ola Aina as being a potential replacement for Kyle Walker, I think, because of that versatility, because of his excellence on the ball. And for me, Liverpool should be too.
Yeah, interesting. Certainly, yeah, with that contract up in the summer, very experienced now, has played in multiple different leagues. Yeah, I quite like it. Lawrence, I believe you've got a younger option here for Liverpool.
I kind of went at both ends of the spectrum, and there was a bit of thinking similar to Joe, where it's like, could you go for like a Joshua Kimmich or someone like that, where, you know, he comes in, he kind of offers some of what I think Trent was alluding to, or he's not even alluding to, he's been nailing this season, but really, you know, what Trent wants to do is probably quite different to what we've got him doing at the moment. He's not exactly in the age profile that Liverpool would traditionally sign, but he does fit that, the Thiago kind of signing. Brings a bit of leadership as well, which is arguably what Liverpool would lose if they did lose someone like Trent. And, you know, he's a big name that I think has, like you said, a lot of technical ability. He can play in multiple different positions and possibly satisfy a lot of what Slot wants in terms of rotating between those two positions. But that's not the name I was going to say. Dedic is my other option.
Okay.
I think, again, you're right. You don't want to step on the toes of a young guy. And I think it's very difficult to bring someone else in, because what you're essentially saying to Conor Bradley, if you sign another high-profile right-back, is you're not that guy. Whereas actually, what you probably want, he is.
He is that guy.
But he also really is that guy.
Yeah.
Or at least you would hope so. Dedic comes in. He comes from a system that Liverpool traditionally love in terms of transfers. So technical background and everything else that he can have at the age of 22 ticks a lot of those boxes. I think we're looking for someone who's more of a traditional right back, or can show I've got those defensive chops, which he definitely does. And also someone who I think comes to the Premier League and will be an out of the box replacement. And, you know, I know Slot is very good at getting players levels up. We've seen multiple positions that he's already improved within this Liverpool team. I think if you get him in early, get him in a pre-season, essentially play him as a right back, which, you know, if you look at heat maps as to what Slot wants, he is much more like that. And then if the position ahead of him was to change as well, I think you've just got a solid option that plays the role that you need him to play, and would probably be quite comfortable in rotating with someone like Conor Bradley, considering his wage increases and all the other aspects that come with playing in the Premier League.
Interesting, of course, yeah. Coming from Salzburg, where Klopp is, like that connection.
Is Klopp there yet? I don't know. Klopp.
I think he's being officially unveiled today, actually.
Yeah, right, okay. So at time of recording, Klopp is, sipping the Red Bull, but we don't know yet. Yeah.
But also, have had success recruiting from that part of the world in the past, namely with Mane. Interesting suggestion there with Dedic. I must admit, neither of these options very expensive at all.
Yeah,
so Liverpool getting away with one.
It's going to be cheap versus expensive, mate.
I did message this. There was a little group put together before.
You want to bring expensive options?
You think?
You should have put your nuts on the line and say Kimmich, mate. You've bottled that.
Although to be fair, Kimmich wouldn't be very expensive either with his contract up as well. So,
all right. So why is Joe on the show then if he's just going to roast me?
I have brought an expensive option to the table. Now, this show is, we're talking in hypotheticals here as we have been done for the whole show. In the case that Salah and Trent were to leave, I do feel like it would be worth Liverpool getting that world-class right back in. Just to have. So I've suggested here as the expensive option, Achraf Hakimi, 26 now.
Joe's angry. Joe doesn't what? I mean,
he signed a contract about a month ago. He's not going to leave PSG. He's just signed a brand new spanking contract.
Maybe it was to make sure that PSG get the value in the market, mate. Maybe that's not what you're seeing.
But I think also at the age of 26, I think he could be tempted to join what is at the moment looking like one of the most exciting projects in Europe if PSG fall short in the Champions League again. Look, again, hypotheticals, but Liverpool needs someone of that calibre in the case that Salah and Trent both leave. I think that's a lot of pressure on Conor Bradley to suddenly come in and, perform not only as a good defensive right-back, but also replicate Trent's assist numbers. Yeah. If you've got someone like Semenyo coming in on the right, you can't expect him to have to replicate Salah's output. So I think you need a really amazing flying right back. Right. Achraf Hakimi is the best out there. Just putting it as an option on the table there in case you don't want to go for one of the more sensible options.
But if I'd have said that, I'd have been ripped apart in the comments. But if you say it and I agree with it, that's fine. So that's okay.
Okay.
Sweet. Well, I'll be ripped apart in the comments, I'm sure. So,
I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Okay. Finally, then. Van Dijk. Now, probably the most impossible one here. Yeah. Like you refer there to before with Trent about leadership. I mean, if you lose Van Dijk, you really do lose the leader in this Liverpool side. Centre-backs, classically hard to replace. Classically, take a bit of time to get used to systems, form partnerships. Mm-hmm. There's also question marks as to who that long-term partner is there as well, with Konate's injury record. Kwanzaa still very young. Joe Gomez, a bit of a utility player across that back line. In some ways, it feels like Liverpool, regardless, need to sign a centre-back this summer. I'll come to you first, Lawrence, with the premium option here. Mm-hmm. Was there anyone that caught your eye as a Van Dijk replacement?
The caveat there is as a Van Dijk replacement, right? Yeah. Because I don't think you can literally replace Virgil van Dijk. When he was brought in, it was sort of like, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get a centre-back who arguably a lot of people had sort of missed the boat on anyway. We kind of got him late, maybe one or even two transfers later than we
at least 6 months late, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And so we ended up paying that premium. Maybe that is what you end up paying in the centre-back market, like you said, because there's so few of them. I don't think you can ever directly replace him because, first of all, especially if Liverpool to lose Trent and Van Dijk, which I don't think they will, in the same summer, essentially you're taking out the captain and the vice-captain. So then where does it go after that? I think Murillo, and only because again, similar to what Van Dijk had, it isn't out of the box. You're already comfortable, relatively, in the league. But again, even this suggestion, I can rip that apart because I don't think he's got the same aerial presence and the same even aura, if you want to put that word on it, that Virgil van Dijk has. And so you would always pay a premium for that. But I can't think of anyone else that Liverpool could even tempt to Liverpool that would even have that same level of aura. So Murillo has to be that for me. And then you pair him up with Konate and you'd say, okay, I'm relatively comfortable with that as a mobile, very quick, and arguably fire putting out back line rather than what they had previously with Van Dijk, where it felt a bit more like a wall and then someone to go around and pivot around that. I still think he's the A side, and I think Liverpool question what Konaté's long-term future is, considering his injury record. But I think also we still underrate Konaté a little bit in terms of what he does in that Liverpool team. So I think he'd make whoever's coming in a bit more comfortable. And they have to have that left-hand-sided ability, which arguably very few people in the market currently do.
It's so difficult, isn't it?
It's why we were so interested in someone like Colwill a couple of seasons ago, allegedly. But even now, you said if we've signed him, what would we have done with him in the short term?
Yeah. I guess Murillo also, he offers something in an attacking sense as well. He has that roaming ability, doesn't he? Something that we'll get onto on another episode, I'm sure. Liverpool's left back situation, but maybe he can assist in that sense in terms of ball progression. And you talk about aura, but Van Dijk didn't automatically have it when he arrived at Liverpool. You were still taking a chance on him out of Southampton. So, Murillo's early kind of signs at Nottingham Forest are that he's a pretty big character. I really like that shout. Joe?
Yeah.
In terms of a budget replacement,
so tough, isn't it? So tough. I think there are potential market opportunities at the moment. Araujo potentially being available out of Barcelona might present a real market opportunity. An outstanding 1v1 defender when we talk about Van Dijk's ability to cover in behind, cover large spaces, an excellent channel defender.
Do you think in the Premier League that fits? Sorry to cut you off.
I think so. I think Araujo is that outstanding. He could move over to the Premier League and make it look fairly seamless. I think the biggest issue with him is he wants to operate more on the right-hand side of a centre-back duo. And the really big issue here is the elephant in the room is his injury record, which is absolutely pathetic, frankly. We talked about, Mo Salah. The best ability is availability.
Same for Van Dijk, by the way.
Yeah, and that is not the case with Araujo. I think he's put up 21 starts across the last 2 seasons. That's not good enough. And if he ends up leaving in this January window, it looks like it'll be to Juventus, who are going to go for sort of an option to buy for a really cheap price. Maybe it's like a loan with a €40 million option to buy. For me, that represents a risk worth taking. And what we were talking about 18 months ago as being one of the most outstanding young defenders in Europe. He's still only 25 years old. Is it a market opportunity for Liverpool? Potentially, given that he wouldn't have to start every game, would he, across the next 6 months with the form of Konaté, with Van Dijk's consistent presence. Maybe there's a bit of rotation that suits him.
Can I also just, one thing I will flag, I think there is, to put this in a political way, I think Liverpool are going to change goalkeeper in the summer as well. And I think it seems fairly nailed on at this point that Alisson will exit the club. Obviously, a lot of people would be devastated. Most people consider him to be in the top 3 Liverpool goalkeepers of all time. He's been fantastic. But they've clearly profiled Mamardashvili as someone who's going to come in and fit, for some reason, better than Alisson would. Fair enough. You cannot bed in a new goalkeeper, a new right-back, and a new centre-back, especially if it's someone like Araujo, all in the same summer.
Yeah.
As good a coach as Slot is,
I agree.
That's just not happening because the bonds have to be there. So ultimately, I think Van Dijk stays. But what you are then saying is, for the cheap option, come in and be a backup for Van Dijk, and let's see.
But I equally, my worry with Araujo after that injury record kind of plays into my mind to such a level when you've got Konaté with such a bad injury record as well, does that work? So I'm actually not going to suggest him. I think there are a couple young options in the market. One that wouldn't be a budget option would potentially fit into Loz's category of Lukeba, who is obviously going to go for an awful lot of money, it looks like, this season, but a left-sided centre-back, left-footed, amazing passer and progressor of the ball, really athletic. Could that be a move that they go, okay, we're just going to stump up the money? I know he's got a huge release clause, but maybe he's of that ceiling where they just go and pay it. Overall, though, my answer is going to be Dean Huijsen. Now, I don't think he's probably available for the £50 million, but I think he's the outstanding young defender in the Premier League. I think he is amazing. I cannot believe the deal Juventus did in the summer. It's an absolute crime. €15 million for Dean Huijsen is comical. The guy is sensational on the ball. He's 6'4". He's got the highest percentage of dual success rate in Europe for an under-21 defender. He never gets beaten in 1v1 situations. He's come in and displaced a really solid backline of Senesi and Zabani. Last season we were saying, this is a really outstanding centre-back duo. Huijsen's come in and just swept them aside and said, no, I'm going to be the starting centre-back here. Despite the fact I'm 19 years old, I can play both sides. I'm languid, great on the ball, physical in the air. He is definitely going to move to a super club, like no doubt about it. And I just wonder whether Liverpool pull the trigger early and say, he might cost 50, 60 million pounds, but Is it better to get that done now?
That tends to be the case, by the way, that if Liverpool do see the point in spending money that then, we can talk about amortisation, whatever you want to talk about. If they see a 7 or 8 year player, then they will spend that money. It's really the reluctance to spend that level of money on someone that they think we might end up upgrading this guy in a couple of years, and can we really get the value? Yeah,
I think he's one of the most outstanding under-21 players in Europe. And he's a centre-half, which is hard to find.
Yeah, massive, 2-footed as well, like you say, can play on both sides.
6'4", unreal.
Seems like, in terms of a profile of someone who could play back up to Van Dijk or even play back up to both of them, seems like a pretty amazing option there.
Let's not forget, in the summer they were very interested in Lenny Yoro. Yeah. I think that was a realistic transfer target for Liverpool. For me, Huijsen feels like he's on that Lenny Yoro level. In terms of 19-year-olds in the Premier League. In that central defensive role, it doesn't happen. You don't see 19-year-old centre-backs in the Premier League because it's so physical. You're run ragged by excellent wingers, powerful forwards. To be able to come from Italy into the Premier League with no transition period as part of one of the best sides in the league in Bournemouth, I understand they might not be competing for titles, but all of the underlying numbers are amongst the best in the league. If you went by expected points, they're in the top 4. So this is an outstanding team, an outstanding player who has taken huge strides forward in 3 months. I dread to think where he's going to be at 23. If he stays injury-free, we could be talking about one of the best centre-backs in Europe.
Nice, yeah. A great advert for Dean Huijsen there.
Amazing player.
Yeah, he's having a great season.
Yeah, give me a call, Dean.
There we have it. Dean Huijsen or Murillo, who do you think is the better option for Liverpool if Van Dijk leaves? Let us know in the comments below. Okay, now it's time for our Sky Mobile Switch of the Week, where each of us bring our favourite done deal or rumour or report that we've seen this week. Loz, what's exciting you right now?
Great question, Zubimendi. Zubimendi's been exciting the Premier League now, seemingly for almost, 18 months, 2 years, and multiple clubs have been excited by him. The rumour at time of recording, which is gaining a lot of pace, is that he's on his way to Arsenal. And actually for a really affordable fee as well, for around 51 mil, which, as a Liverpool fan, someone who we thought we had him in our clutches last season, still seems like a great deal to me. I know that there's something that managers just really want about his expertise, his technical ability, his ability to move the ball through midfield quickly, win it back very quickly, the space that he uses, the way that he closes other people down so quickly. It's something that seemingly Arsenal have strangely lacked this season, considering the personnel in the midfield. But, they've already signed someone from Sociedad, and they might need someone else from Sociedad to unlock that one player from Sociedad. And I think he suits a profile that the Premier League suits, should we say. Liverpool wanted him for a very good reason. Pep wanted him for a very good reason. And now Arsenal have got him for that very good reason, seemingly. I guess the worry with him is, would he be someone who's a bit homesick, like maybe like a Jesus Navas type player, because he's been so reluctant to leave? But I think he's a great signing. And I think, again, he brings versatility that Arsenal have been seemingly searching for quite some time. And all of their recent signings have been searching for that maestro in midfield that's just going to unlock everyone that's ahead of him. I think he's that guy. There's a culture there that I think will suit him. So
I love it, man. I love it. Just when they need a striker to get another defensive mid. No, I like the deal. I'm joking. I'm joking. I do like the deal. Especially with Partey and Jorginho leaving this summer.
That's the thing. It's kind of future-proofing that midfield, isn't it?
I think he's the signing of the summer if they get him. I mean, obviously they'll get him in Jan, but if he comes in the summer, I think they're already ahead of everyone else.
Yeah.
And it seems like they'll have stolen a march on Liverpool. By the way, he'll have heard pitches from Liverpool, Chelsea, City, and he chose Arsenal. That's the point here. He chose Arsenal because all of us still wanted him.
Yeah, the Basque connection with Arteta doing wonders there. Joe, who have you? What's been exciting?
I'm going to go for Mathys Tel joining Chelsea. This rumour sort of circulated over the last 24 hours or so, hasn't it? Seemingly Nkunku could go the other way. I don't know whether it'll be a part of a swap deal or Bayern kind of want to just pay a fee. I'd be surprised if they want to lose Mathys Tel, because we are talking about one of the outstanding young strikers in European football here. And frankly, he's not getting enough minutes. 29 minutes of football this season in the Bundesliga under Vincent Kompany is just not good enough. And I think he would have hoped that despite the fact Harry Kane arrived, his minutes would have slowly started to grow over the last few seasons, given Harry Kane's injury problems throughout his career and the fact he's approaching the tail end of his career, but it just hasn't been the case. Harry Kane has just put up consistent minutes, consistent goals, and Mathys Tel hasn't got the opportunity in domestic play. nowhere near enough. He's still only 19 years old, but I do like the fit to Chelsea. I know they've got Mark Guiu on the books, but it feels like Mathys Tel is maybe just a level above where Mark Guiu is right now. And with Nicholas Jackson's form kind of just bubbling under the surface, there is a little bit of chat, isn't there, online about some of the finishing recently, despite the fact over the last season and a half, in my opinion, he's been massively underrated with his goal-scoring output. It would be nice to see a player like Mathys Tel come in. He'd get a lot of minutes in the Conference League, wouldn't he? Potentially, in the long term, be the replacement for Nicholas Jackson. If you can get one of the outstanding young strikers in Europe for under 50 million euros right now, or as part of a deal for a player that isn't involved in your long-term plans like Nkunku, I think this would be an amazing bit of business by Chelsea.
I agree.
Yeah, really interesting one. That can also play on the left as well if needed, although Chelsea relatively well stocked in that position. I'll finish off then with a done deal. This happened at the end of last week. Enzo Lefebvre to Sunderland.
Ridiculous.
I think it was really telling that this was not only one of the most talked about moves in the Championship. It's been one of the most talked about moves, full stop. Just goes to show what a coup this is for Sunderland. Enzo Lefebvre, if you're not familiar with him, 2-3 years ago when he was playing under Sunderland manager Virgil at Lorient in France, looked like one of the preeminent or soon to be preeminent midfield forces in European football in terms of his all-round ability. Amazing ball progressor, really great chance creator, amazing ball winner as well. A really amazing all-round midfielder. The fact that Roma signed him for signed him for 23 million euros last summer speaks volumes. Didn't really work out for him at Rennes, didn't work out for him at Roma, of course. So for Sunderland to get him on this loan deal,
back with a former gaffer though, it's key, man.
Yeah, massive. So yeah, really exciting stuff. It'll be exciting also to see how he links up with someone like Joe Bellingham, with someone like Chris Rigg. Really exciting stuff for Sunderland.
Rome's very similar to Sunderland as well. So
yeah, massively. Yeah. No culture shock whatsoever.
No, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, he'll fit right in. That's all we have time for this week on the Sky Mobile Transfer Show. Remember that with all the transfers going on this month, it's never been easier to switch to Sky Mobile. All you need to do is text PAC, that's PAC, to 65075 and Sky Mobile will do the rest. Thanks for joining us today, Lawrence.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Anytime, mate.
And we will catch you next week.